In the annals of time, riding social forces as they crest and crash onto the shores of history, some would-be heroes stumble but manage to recover their breath. Others are reduced to the flotsam and jetsam of nostalgia. These others are our subjects. They are the vanquished, 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 vanquished.
Hello and welcome to The Vanquished. Anders J. Lee here with my trusty co-host Freddie G.
I'm so happy to be here.
And we're talking today with a special guest, Alyse Morales.
Hello, I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us to discuss Marco Rubio.
You know, I was going to say it's a subject near and dear to my heart. I don't know if that's the exact terminology, but as a Cuban American, I've had my eye on Marco Rubio for a long time, and I definitely have developed a lot of opinions.
I feel like every ethnic group in America has that presidential loser. For me, it's Walter Mondale for Norwegian Americans.
Okay.
Oh, for me, it's Bernie. Yeah, he's got that same accent. Yeah, we've got the best one. Marco Rubio does not inspire dearness or tenderness. I think of him as he is the GOP Kamala Harris. Perfect candidate on paper, but doesn't really rile up any kind of a base and kind of fades the longer he goes on.
You know what? When you first said that before we started recording, I was like, what does he mean? And I'm like, that actually tracks for me. Getting back to the Cuban Americanness of it all, it is tough for us. Our representation in U.S. government is tough. It's Marco Rubio, it's Ted Cruz, and then we had one Democrat, and that Democrat was Bob Menendez.
Yeah.
Who had gold bars sewn into his suit jacket. So we gotta get somebody else. We gotta get somebody else pronto.
Do you think you're going to run for office one day, maybe?
Don't make me. I don't want to.
That's right. It's a lot of pressure. At least Bob Menendez never ran for president, but it's too bad he didn't.
No, but he's from my parents' hometown in Union City, New Jersey.
Really?
And they kind of knew him from around a little bit because he was like very involved he came up in politics in Union City, and Union City's politics were really corrupt. So my mom will always be like, well, you know, he learned that from the best, from Mayor Musto. Mayor Musto was corrupt. And he actually testified against Mayor Musto, and look where he is now. And I'm like, wow, okay. It goes deep.
Shouldn't have betrayed Musto.
He shouldn't have betrayed Mayor Musto like that.
Yeah.
I actually can't speak to Mayor Musto. I don't know. Maybe he needed to be betrayed.
I've been to Union City, New Jersey. It is a weird place. It feels like New York in a time capsule from the 70s.
Yes.
Like it has not been updated. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is. It used to, there's like a lot of immigrant waves go through Union City in general, but it used to be called Havana on the Hudson because of how many Cubans lived there.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, maybe if Rubio had made it to the final round, he would have gotten some support from Union City.
He might have.
Slade, New Jersey.
He might have.
Yeah. But we're talking about him today because, in part, he's, I think, maybe the first Trump nomination that's actually going to go through, because it seems like a lot of these other guys are not serious.
Yeah, well, as the day we're recording it, Gates is out.
Yep.
Gates said, uh-oh, everybody's talking about my sex crimes.
Right.
Oops, I brought more attention to my sex crimes.
Yeah. And Rubio, as far as I know, doesn't have those skeletons in his
He's clean. Rubio is not a huge scandal guy.
No.
He has corruption scandals, but they are really boring. And he explains them, and it just makes you bored. And his policies are horrific, but he is not insanely corrupt. I looked it up. His net worth, at least in 2018, was minus 1.8 million.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So Marco Rubio sold his soul, and his soul is worth negative $2 million.
He should have gotten some gold bars. He should have gotten on the Menendez train.
I do like how in America is like how the more in debt you are, the more lavish you're actually living. Like your life is so much more comfortable than someone who has like technically thousands more dollars than you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Rubio's a negative millionaire, and Trump is probably a negative billionaire.
Right.
How do I get into that kind of debt? Like, because I'm in debt, but it's not translating to me living a lavish lifestyle. It's just translating to like credit card companies calling me. How do I get into the kind of debt where suddenly I'm rich somehow.
I think you need to go into politics.
Yeah, God, I guess that's where this is going.
Yeah.
I guess this is where I announce.
Yeah, this is how Alyse is going to launch her career.
Well, Rubio's leaving. There's going to be a special election. So this is actually to recruit Alyse to run against Rubio.
And my parents are residents in Florida, so they did the retirement thing and went down there. So what are they nominating little Marco for again?
Secretary of State.
Oh God.
Which I think he's probably going to get.
it. Yeah, no, he's definitely going to get it.
He's like the most normal guy that Trump has put up so far. I don't know why he chose Rubio, but I guess that just have one acceptable person in there.
Yeah.
The thing he did really well in 2016 is he is very good at Islamophobia. So, and that is the main U.S. foreign policy, is just being mean to Muslim people and doing it in very different, and Iran hawkery and attack and calling parts of Israel, Judea, and Samaria from the Bible and stuff like that. And Rubio's good at that.
Oh, he's going to act so crazy to Venezuela, too. He's going to be so bad. He's going to be so bad for the current situation in Cuba. I mean, whatever. Okay, he's Secretary of State. That's fine.
He's very hawkish on Cuba. Yeah, he said he definitely does not want them to continue being communist, and he wants to keep the sanctions and all that.
Yeah, the embargo and everything. Ugh, which hasn't worked and isn't going to. But okay, cool, great. Secretary of State for him. Good job.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, Fred and I are going to, on a later up, dive into his past, his childhood, and what makes him little Marco, I guess. But when he came on the national stage was in 2012, gave a speech at the RNC, and I think this is before I first heard of him, but it was around this time, a little after the 2012 election, when for a minute there it was like, well, the Republicans are cooked. They have no hope at the presidential level. And if they are going to win, then they have to have a person like Marco Rubio. And so the first time I heard about him, I was like, oh, wow, I don't like this guy. Or I'm worried about him because maybe he could actually get the Republicans back in the White House. Little did we know that strategy was totally wrong.
Yeah, that was like after Obama won in 2012 was when the Republicans, they had some kind of like big conference.
The autopsy.
Yeah, and they were like, what are we going to do? And then it's like, you guys don't have to worry about anything. Oh, it's cute you're worried.
And it seemed like the perfect solution was to nominate a Hispanic guy who was still hawkish on the border and super racist towards Muslims.
To find a racist Hispanic guy who looks pretty white. So like a white Cuban guy. Yeah, no, he seemed, again, like you said, on paper, perfect, but then powerful dorkiness that prevents him from, just a rizzless person, I would say.
Yeah, he is rizzless,
Right. Well, I think a through line here is he's trying to be the Republican Obama, and there can kind of only be one Obama, and it's not a Republican.
Yeah.
You can't like replicate that on the other side of the aisle. But during this speech, this is after Clint Eastwood does the weird chair thing where he talks to a chair.
We've done
for like
much
10
on
minutes.
the chair.
And Rubio goes up to the podium, and I think this is the beginning of a germ in his mind. Is he takes a sip of water and says, I think I just drank Clint Eastwood's water. And it kills. The entire crowd is just dying, roaring with laughter. And then like a little over a year later, I think his next time on the national stage is a State of the Union response. And my theory is he remembered that laugh that he got a year ago, and he thought he could do a callback and everyone would find it charming again. And it just, as he was doing it, he realized, like, this isn't going to work. This is going to bomb.
Oh, wait, no. The point was that it was Clint Eastwood's water, and now this is actually just random water.
Yeah.
It's actually not funny for me to just drink water.
Right.
Oh, God. I, like, remember so vividly that image of him drinking the water, and he, like, stays looking at camera and just, like, drinks it, and we really clowned him for that. The whole world clowned him for that.
He maintains full eye contact. I was watching the video. He does sound a little dry in the video, and he's wiping sweat. I think it was hot in the room.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like coming up on him. And this also, like, he doesn't say anything interesting enough to then get past that. So all people talk about is the water.
Right.
I think that job of doing the response is like one of the most thankless jobs you can get, because you're always going to look diminished next to the president who just did it in front of Congress. So you're always going to look kind of like silly and small. And then for some reason, Republicans always find a way to do like the weirdest thing possible as well. Like they had that woman give it this year, Katie Britt, who did it from her kitchen and sounded so... She did like that evangelical pastor's wife voice the whole time and was very creepy. Marco Rubio is famous. And then there was that other one.
Joe Kennedy 3 did it.
Yeah.
He was bad.
That is Bobby Jindal sounded like a Muppet.
Is the one I was thinking of.
Right.
Bobby Jindal also, everyone clowned him just because he was weird. And then, the little Kennedy came off weird as well.
Yeah.
He was like, he had like a lot of spittle on his mouth. I felt like.
He needed water.
I think they just, like, both parties should just be like, let's just not do it anymore.
Yeah, you don't need to, really.
You don't need to. We know you don't agree.
Right.
We know. At this point, they're heckling during the speech.
Right.
Like, we know that you guys aren't happy with what was said, so...
Yeah.
Because they just will take like a rising star and just kneecap them by giving them that job.
No, that's very true. And plus you have people on CNN just saying all the same stuff you're going to say.
Yeah.
But they do it in a more relaxed way. I mean, I feel like with the water thing, it seems like he did really need it. But I don't know if you guys have had this where you're about to go on stage to do comedy and you think I should have water. I didn't have water before.
Yeah,
it's going to go bad because I didn't have water. My mouth's not going to work. And then you get up there and it like has no effect on your performance whatsoever.
My brain will do the opposite where it's like immediately before I'm about to go on and I'm like, I actually have to pee more than I've ever had to pee in my entire life. And then it just goes away immediately as soon as I walk out.
I have that too. I need to be hydrated, fully urinated, but then you don't actually need that stuff.
No.
Until you do, which I guess did happen. I think he genuinely may have gotten parched.
It is also weird that they're not supposed to be human. Yeah, like them drinking water is weird, but it is just a weird little bottle. And he maintains eye contact the entire time, which SNL points out. They have Taron Killam do him. Right.
Yeah, that was a great... during Weekend Update, they have him come on, and he's doing that tiny, tiny water bottle. Yeah. It was a great bit.
Yeah.
And that is, I guess, what leads him into running for president. That's like what he's known for. And you would think he'd wait a little bit and find something else to parlay into a national campaign. But it's the water thing, which is how people know him. And in 2015, he launches. He's already raised $530,000 in first 3 months of 2014. Everybody thought it was going to happen. But one person who was definitely, I don't know about totally surprised, but disappointed was Jeb Bush.
Jeb.
He was so sad that Mark, because he was like his protege in Florida politics, and Jeb Bush, who was not Cuban, but he married a Cuban woman, and that was another thing going into 2016. It's like Jeb Bush could win because he speaks Spanish.
Yes.
Which I think may have been another miscalculation.
I know. It's so funny the things that we like thought would happen in 2016. Yeah. Like what could have been. It's very interesting. Just like the Cuban American voting bloc in Florida in particular is just such a powerful voting bloc, and they are super conservative. So it is like there's this very interesting dance within the Republican Party in general of like, how do we make them like us the most? I could marry one. I could speak their little language. Or we could just pick one. And like, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
And Rubio has the thing, he has to pretend like his family fled Castro, but they actually came like 5 years earlier. And then it's like, well, they thought they could go back, but I guess they're not gonna because of communism.
And it doesn't seem like they're going to go back anytime soon,
No.
unfortunately. But the staff of Jeb Bush starts referring to Marco to the press as Judas behind his back. And Jeb himself, he's trying to keep it together in public because he's about to run for president. But he will add little jabs towards his friend and call him Marquito as a way of sort of diminishing him.
Which is Spanish for little Marco.
I know. There's something truly deep in his essence that makes people want to call him Little Marco.
Is he a little guy?
Yeah, that's the one I looked up his height. How tall do you think he is, Alyse?
How tall do I think he is? I would say that I think he's actually like an average height.
Okay, that's right. He's 5'9".
Okay.
Yeah, so he's for president, he's short. He played college quarterback, like Division III junior college, something like that. He's short for that, but he's not short for a person.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's about his energy. Like his aura is little Marco.
Right. And that was, as we got to a big flaw in his 2016 campaign, is he was just giving little. There's a juvenile quality to him, which is maybe reflected in his campaign logo, which is lowercase font. You have it there, Fred?
Oh, yeah.
It's lowercase font. So he's already diminishing himself.
Yeah.
And it's just very subtle. It's all one word, Marco Rubio. There's no space between the first and last name. And the dot on the I is the continental United States.
Yeah, the dot. I'm like, okay, so the dot is America.
And it's all red, too. There's no blue in this. This is not a bipartisan flag.
Well, the Rubio.
The Rubio is blue, but his...
See, I'm seeing it as black. This is too black.
Okay,
red and black.
Now we got to do...
Yeah, it's for coal. It looks like a real estate firm that lost all its money in the 2008 crash.
Yeah.
Especially because the subhead or the slogan is a new American century, which by 2016, the century's been going on for over a decade now. And, we were promised a new American century when we went into Iraq, and that didn't go so well.
It's also a callback to a Time article from like 1942 that we covered on the Henry Wallace episode.
Right.
So it's almost no one alive remembers the American century stuff from back then.
No, yeah, this image is so perfectly Marco Rubio because it makes me feel literally nothing. Like it's giving absolutely nothing. I'm like, a new American century? Okay. The all lowercase, like it doesn't jump out at me at all.
Yeah, you need some kind of like logo. Like the name can't be the only logo. You need like an eagle or like some kind of comet or, something on that for people to look at other than just a continental U.S. IDOT.
You could change it out for like another country. Yeah, like he could run for Cuba and then just say a new Cuban century and put the map of Cuba as the dot.
Yes, like how when Eric Adams gives speeches, he's always like, New York is the Islamophobic of America or whatever. Yeah. Like he just always puts a new city based on what group he's talking about.
He is the anti-Marco Rubio, Eric Adams. He's all Riz and no policy.
Riz. Yes, absolutely.
That's a good point.
That is so true.
Well, like Fred said, he was a great candidate on paper, but once the things start heating up, not everyone's first choice. There's a poll that comes out that he is, in 2013, neck and neck with Rand Paul, who was another person who I guess he was just there.
What's happened to Rand? Was he around?
He's still a senator.
He's alive, right? He's alive.
I mean, it got kind of close there because he got in a fight with his neighbor who broke several of his ribs.
Yes, he did get in a physical fight.
Man, there's so much we're going to be able to milk for this show out of the 2016 Republican primaries. God. Like, it's an utter clown car.
Yeah, we're going to do his dad, too. We're going to do hours and hours on just the Paul family.
But in the primary, a lot of people saw Marco as like the second choice or third choice. And they weren't sure if he was that electable. But he is much younger than everybody else. Hillary, presumptive Democratic nominee, born in 1947. He's born in 1971. That would have been a big contrast. And, again, he was positioning himself as kind of the GOP Obama. But they hate Obama. So it's an obstacle there. One of his slogans, he loves saying that the world is a safer and better place when America has the strongest military in the world.
Okay.
Which is debatable. But again, everyone who's a Republican agrees with that. That's not anything new.
And it's also just a statement that's like, okay, that's what a presidential candidate for the Republican Party would say. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sure. New American century. Okay. Okay.
Right. And Obama, he's trying to spin as like, he pretended to be a centrist going in, but then became really liberal in office, which is kind of the opposite of what actually happened.
That's an interesting way to interpret what took place.
Yeah. But we suffered through his announcement speech. Fred wrote down some highlights.
He does try to make jokes. They're not good, but yeah, he's like we're governing into the 20th century. but it's the 21st century. People are taxing and borrowing like it's 1999. Okay. You know, like party like it's 1999. He's referencing a Prince song from like 1984.
Right. And also, I don't feel like I know a lot about how people were taxing and borrowing in 1999 for like the reference to make like party like it's 1999. It was like, well, there were a lot of parties because we were doing the millennium thing. Everyone thought Y2K was going to have like where there was like a party energy that was happening. Taxing and borrowing like it's 1999. I'm like, I feel like it's probably
as
similar
a nerd. That was the last time we had a surplus.
Exactly. Okay. It makes no sense. Yeah, like that. Wouldn't you want to be doing that? Like if you're a Republican,
it's only a reference to the Prince song. But again, the Prince song hasn't been cool since the 80s.
And I think this sets the tone as like this guy is a lightweight and is not going to be it. And he does take a sip from a really small paper cup during the speech, which you got to get that out of the way, I guess. You got to like really hydrate beforehand and then just run to the bathroom after.
Yeah, I'm confused as to why he doesn't just drink some water before these speeches. Like, why is he becoming so parched? Because these speeches aren't that long.
I think he's worried he's going to have to pee during the speech.
Yeah, or something.
I think I has to pee a lot.
Because especially the State of the Union response, it's like that thing's 10 minutes max?
Yeah,
it's like a 14, 15-minute speech.
Okay.
By minute 11, he's thirsty.
He's thirsty.
It happens at 10:50, and I watch this like this is a Zapruder film.
Okay. Every shot.
But his signature line from the speech is he talks about how his dad was in the back of the room because he used to be a bartender, and now he is standing in the front of the room. So, American story, American dream. You're a bartender, so your son can be president. At least that's what happened in his family.
Yeah, like because unlike Jeb or Trump, he didn't grow up rich. He did grow up working class.
Yeah.
He doesn't represent the working class now. He's very much a ladder puller. Like I made it, and I'm not make it, so you guys can't make it, and I'm gonna go against immigration and everything.
Yeah, that's a common refrain in the Miami Cuban American community, which I can say is there's a ladder pulling generally that's happening there.
Yeah. I remember him giving a speech. I remember Jon Stewart making fun of this. Is that he gave a speech on the Senate floor about how his dad used to like drive him around rich neighborhoods, and they just like gawk at the really nice houses, which is a very American thing. A lot of people's families do that if they just like architecture in some cases.
Yeah.
I think that maybe explains some of his political thinking. But he's at first isn't going after Trump because Trump announces in 2015, and for the first several months is just everyone thinks he's a joke, even though he's polling really well. But we had just gone through this in 2012, where there are all these gimmick candidates who were like a flash in the pan for a couple of months and then went away. And everyone assumed that would happen with Trump. And his Rubio is, I guess people are starting to feel like he's the only serious contender. And so his poll numbers are going up as we near the voting. And there's some debates. He goes back and forth with Ted Cruz. And they're, talking about Obama's DOJ and about the Bible, like who can be more on brand as like the really conservative Latino guy.
Yeah. Did they yell in Spanish at each other?
Yes.
Okay. Great. I'm like getting this visceral image of them yelling in Spanish at each other.
So he says something like, I will make the light shine for the 21st century. Rubio say that in like a closing statement. And then Cruz immediately comes on and says, I'm going to kill terrorists. And it's just like, that's what people want. He gives you the red meat.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think, Rubio's lane was always kind of more moderate than Ted Cruz. But he still, has to try and position himself that way.
He does have a little bit like Kamala where he's running on a slightly different platform than he had earlier. He had been a little bit more in the middle. Now he's trying to run more as a Tea Party guy and basically try to convince Ted. In the debates, him and Ted Cruz will debate, and he'll say, I agree with you. even though originally maybe he didn't. He was a little more for a path to citizenship and immigration and stuff like that.
Yeah, because Ted Cruz at this point was like the Tea Party villain, but also like darling of that entire thing. Like for the later Obama years especially, Ted Cruz was like the number one bad guy. Like that, right. The Democrats hated. It was always like, oh my God, Ted Cruz.
Because he had shut the government down, to stop Obamacare from rolling out.
Yes.
And Marco's not a guy who's going to like go do that. Ted Cruz is like the guy in 12 Angry Men where he's willing to disagree with everybody and try to convince them. And Marco Rubio is definitely more of a go along to get along guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he tries to say that people asking him about missing votes in Washington and about him being too young, that that's the Republican establishment talking, when he's clearly just an ambitious guy. But there is an interesting question from this Fox debate where he's asked why he's losing in Florida to Trump, who now at this point he's polling well, so they have to include him in the debates, but everybody thinks the other shoe's going to drop at some point. But why are you trailing Trump by 24 points?
Oh my God, 24 is so many. It's not even a little.
And it asked, people were saying you're the Republican savior, and what gives with these poll numbers? And Rubio's answer, maybe this is the best he could do. He says, well, let me be clear about one thing. There's only one savior, and it's not me. It's Jesus Christ. Who came down to earth and died for our sins. Okay. So I guess that's it's some kind of pivot, but it just goes to show they just didn't have an explanation or a response to this Donald Trump guy.
No, and I think, and this is true of like myself and everyone, is that I think everyone was just like, yeah, we're getting all of this data that this is happening, and this guy's really popular and he's striking a chord, but it can't be so. Like something's gonna. I think everyone, even Republicans, had this feeling of like someone's gonna sort this out, and it's like, no, you actually are the ones who are supposed to do it.
Right.
It's not gonna be Jeb stopping Trump. No. Jeb is going after Trump, and everyone else is like, okay, that's good. Screw Jeb. So Rubio is big on pandering to Christianity and all types of Christianity. At one point, he was baptized Mormon. Then he goes back to Catholicism. And then now
you
in
can
his
do that?
life, he was, in Vegas. When he was living in Vegas, because in Vegas, there's more Mormons out in the West. It's near Utah.
Right.
And then...
God, imagine being a Mormon in Vegas. That's a tough life.
Yeah.
Surrounded by temptations.
You really get tested, yeah.
And it may have hurt him for the VP in 2012 because Romney was like, well, he's sort of Mormon, and we can't have two Mormons, even though he had gone back to Catholicism. And now his wife and him, they do some church that does Bible study, and they try to do an evangelical thing too. So he's in every part of Christianity. If he ever ran up in a story, he tried to be Greek Orthodox also.
Yeah.
He is just pandering in every way to Christians.
Yeah. And not to Muslims. He's
no, not at all.
I don't see him going to temple or going to a mosque. But on Iran,
he's going to shut it down.
Throughout these debates, just really, really sour on the Iran deal. And he says the Iranians aren't going to comply. And like in hindsight, I think they did, but like, why would they? If like they get this deal for like a couple of years and then this crazy guy comes in and completely does away with it. And all these people in America who are leaders and running to be a leader are saying, we're going to renege the deal we just made with you guys.
They do want the debates point this out. Yeah, that basically we gave Iran a bunch of money early in the deal. And then the rest of the deal is them doing what we want. And by rescinding it, we're just basically giving them money to do almost nothing.
Yeah.
And Rubio's like, no, I still want to rescind the deal. They're going to get missiles and kill us and all that stuff.
But even with that, he's still trying to walk this line where he's really horrified, like a lot of Republicans are pretending to be, by the Muslim ban proposal that Trump comes out with like early 2016, late 2015, where he actually comes out and says it, that he's wants to ban Muslims, as he pronounces it, from coming to America. And Republicans just don't know how to respond to that because they're like, you can't say that, We all have been trying to do that for almost 2 decades, but you can't say that out loud. And everyone just kind of assumes that this is beyond the pale. but it doesn't hurt Trump.
And Jeb is like, some Muslims have a lot of oil money. My family loves those.
Yeah.
Secretary of State. Oh, wait. No, you said Jeb said that. Sorry. I was like, Marco.
Yeah, who he does. When it comes to ISIS, he has like a couple nuanced points, but then Ted Cruz steps in and is like, we just need to carpet bomb everywhere where ISIS is near. Interesting in the debate that the super PACs come up, and Trump is talking about getting rid of super PACs, which I wonder what happened to that. But Rubio claims that the Democrat we can't get rid of super PACs because the Democrats have their own super PAC, and it's called the mainstream media.
Bam. That hits hard with the crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is when Trump is saying he's self-funding, and also people are worried that he would appoint liberals to the Supreme Court. So it's kind of the opposite of the current Trump, where he's very bought off by companies and appoints the most conservative possible people.
Yeah. Well, it's like we just didn't, no one knew what to make of him, except that it's like, I mean, it's bad that he's doing this well, but what is he actually going to do? Mm-hmm. What does he actually stand for? And it's like the most negative stuff you can imagine.
Yeah. But so going into the primaries, there's a debate on an SNL sketch that where Pete Davidson is playing Little Marco. And at this point, Rubio's fourth place, losing to Ben Carson. And his argument in the sketch is that he's the hottest guy on stage, which I think is probably true at that point, right?
I guess.
I mean, there is a moment that I think about a lot where this is around this time where Trump's giving a speech and he points out how the media has said that Marco is so good looking, and he says, I think I'm better looking than he is. And I have to wonder, does Trump actually think that? Because
he said that about Kamala,
he said that about
too.
Kamala as well.
What?
He was like, yes.
He was like,
I'm better looking than Kamala too. And I'm like, but I don't know if when Donald Trump looks in the mirror, if he sees himself as he is now, or if he sees himself in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, like I think he always just sees the version of him that was like opening the plaza and all of that. Or he sees the Sebastian Stan version of him or whatever.
Home Alone 2 Trump.
Yeah.
That's how he always wants to be remembered, as the guy in Home Alone 2.
Yeah.
Which is not a good looking guy there.
No, yeah, he's kind of older at that point. This is my big prediction for the next couple of years. I think we're going to see the rise of Barron, because Barron looks the most like Trump did as a youth, and I think that's very meaningful to him. And he's 6'9", which is insane.
6'9"? Oh my God.
6'9".
That's terrifying. He's around this city. He's
I
running
know. If you ever see a giant boy in Washington Square Park, it's Barron Trump.
I had high hopes for Barron, but it seems like he's going to be just another Trump kid.
We still haven't heard him say anything.
There's like one video. Well, there's one video from when he was a baby.
Yeah, and he has like a Slavic accent, because clearly Donald Trump's never talked to him.
But there's some dinner where he's caught like on the side talking to somebody, and you hear his kind of like a deep voice, but you barely hear him. One
thing with Rubio is, and the good looking comes into this, is his wife was a Miami Dolphins cheerleader. And that is the coolest thing, and possibly the only cool thing about Marco Rubio.
That is
that
cool.
He got a cheerleader, she became the mom of his kids, and that's his claim to fame.
And that is a big deal, because right around now, this is when at some point, Trump will call Ted Cruz's wife ugly.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So if you're rocking with an ugly wife, Trump is going to say something. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I guess he never went after him there.
No. He's got a beautiful wife. I'll say that. Beautiful wife.
There was a really interesting article from Politico I dug up, which it symbolizes in that the Rubio campaign in many ways is like kind of a quintessential 2010s campaign, because at this time there were like people writing about this, how politics to a lot of people had become totally digital, and just the real like on the ground campaigning and door knocking and infrastructure didn't matter anymore, and this is all about computers now and data, and that kind of explains Clinton's loss in some ways. But Rubio was very much, it seems, of that mindset. He doesn't open his Iowa headquarters till the state fair is already going on, and he's flipping pork chops at the state fair, and he doesn't come to the opening of his campaign office because he has to go back to Florida to send his kids off to school. And then the opening gets delayed for 10 days, happens without Marco. He doesn't have a state director in Iowa. And as Politico said, this is a fitting episode for a campaign that had bragged about how staff could work just as well out of a Starbucks with a laptop. And they wouldn't even have supporters in Iowa, dispatched to campaign until January 2016. And like his donors had to like beg him, like send people out and actually campaign. And when they finally announced field offices, it took them just forever to say where they would be, like where the like mini offices would be.
That's such a strange choice because Iowa does feel like the one place where that actually isn't true, that you can work just as well as off a laptop because they have the caucus and you have to like really go be in person and like bother people to show up to the caucus and like also be at the caucus and get people to like move around for you. So it seems like that's truly, of all the swing states or all the like important states or whatever, because I guess it's not that it's a swing state, it's that it's like first in the lineup. Of all the important states, that really feels like the one where that's like not the case at all.
Yeah. And it's crazy because he could have won Iowa. Iowa ends up being very close. Ted Cruz wins it. If Rubio had won it, maybe he gets a bump and wins New Hampshire, and then he kind of sinks Trump down. So he does kind of blow it early in the campaign. There's a window for him because Jeb has already faded by the time the voting starts.
Yeah. And also, like, so his volunteers don't know where they're going to volunteer. It's very hard to, like, they don't know, they want to help, but they need marching orders. And they also have to pay for their own merch. They have to pay for their own Rubio swag, which is just, like, totally, it's a totally hollowed out campaign that it's amazing that he did as well as he did, considering that. But he finishes third in Iowa behind Cruz and Trump. This is, people forget Cruz, that first Iowa primary, Cruz won. Trump came in second, 24%. Cruz got 27%. And then Rubio's pretty close, 23%. So they're going into Iowa, and it looks, at the time we're still, people acknowledge Trump is real at this point, but Rubio and Cruz are treated like the front runners. I remember thinking that Trump had skipped the Iowa debate, that Trump was just not actually wanting to win the nomination and just wanted to be in the debates. Right. Which is maybe true.
I'm like, that is probably actually accurate.
Yeah, there's definitely the producer's quality to.
He loves doing the debates. He loves doing the rallies. He does not like being the president at all. But he has to, because otherwise he'll go to jail.
It's true. But going into New Hampshire, Rubio's positioned to do quite well until the infamous Chris Christie exchange at the New Hampshire debate, where Rubio is caught kind of short-circuiting. His line is, "Let's dispel once and for all with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's taking a systematic effort to change the country," and lists all the stuff Obama did. And Chris Christie accuses him of having a canned line and saying, like, you're not authentic. You're a senator. I'm a governor. I'm a real guy.
I'm from Jersey.
I'm from Jersey. I hang out with Bob Menendez. And you're not for real. And he accuses him of having a canned line. And then Marco makes maybe the worst mistake you could make in this situation and repeats the canned line. He says again, he's like, "Let's dispense with this fiction that Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing." And Chris Christie's like, "Dude, you just said that." And this is just an utter humiliation. This is, I think what really may have sunk his candidacy, because he, has to come out the next day and say that he has to kind of stick to his guns and be like, well, I said that because I believe it, and I repeated it because it's important, and I'm going to continue to say it because this is the main reason I'm running, is because Obama knows exactly what he's doing.
Let me make another point on Christie. Yeah, and we'll eventually do Christie. Christie then drops out and endorses Trump, and it's almost like Christie said, "I'm going to give America Donald Trump," and and then now Christie is an anti-Trumper, but it's like, Trump was your fault, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he said that thing in the, what was it? Like,
Donald
they
Duck.
should call you Donald Duck.
Yeah.
And so it's very funny also for him to have destroyed Marco Rubio with this canned line thing when he delivered a canned line that was so like earth-shatteringly cringy. It was crazy.
Yeah. But as one Marco Rubio advisor said that before that debate moment, Rubio is poised to take second in New Hampshire, ends up getting fifth.
Ooh.
10.6% of the vote. And as they said, Politico candidate whose campaign had betted all on his ability to perform had just made a critical mistake, and there's no organization to provide a safety net. And there's a recurring theme. Every time there's a failure from Rubio, he just doesn't have a structure in place to back him up. But he still stays in, and this is where the real pivot happens. He becomes the anti-Trump guy, the original Never Trump Republican, and he starts ridiculing Trump, goes on CNN, calls him a third world strongman. He even says that he is worried someone could die at a Trump rally. Because around this time, there are people were accused at the time, this is somewhat accurate, of being Bernie supporters who were going to Trump rallies to protest, and in some cases, they were getting beat up. And even Rubio is saying we should be worried because something bad could happen. Someone could actually die here.
It is kind of like a smart move for him to have made at this point, because now, like, once you finally decide to take Trump seriously, it's like, okay, somebody has to emerge as the alternative candidate. So I feel like it was at this point in the race that people started to be like, oh shit, I guess I should try to be that.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually going to be Trump versus one of the rest of us. So I should try to be the one.
And Rubio's problem is that Kasich's not dropping out, and then Cruz is also in, and Cruz is not listening to anybody, and he's kind of an insurgent also. Jeb Bush doesn't drop out till a little bit later. So they maybe at this point they could have coalesced, but they do not, and there's a lot of egos in the room.
Yeah. They did not have the wherewithal to do to Trump what the Democrats did to Bernie over and over again.
True.
Like, it can be done, and we've seen it done, but they did not do it.
There's a line that this becomes a major news story, and this is when we're starting to see like ridiculous things about genitalia size are actually becoming like on the nightly news, and political pundits have to like address that and actually talk about
Right, because he's like, Donald Trump has small hands or something, and then he's like,
he says Rubio says Trump is 6'2", but he has the hands of someone who's 5'2". You know what they say about small hands.
It's just unfortunate because the thing is, like, at his core, Rubio is just, I mean, he's little Marco. He's just a dork. And at his core, Donald Trump is the most proficient bully that has ever existed. And it's just like, it's not an even matchup. Like, it's just not. It's not a fair fight.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, Rubio knows all the details. Like, they asked Trump in one debate about like the nuclear triad, and he has no idea what it is. And then Rubio names it. But he's willing to do this to be president, because, as I always say, running for president is a mental illness.
Yeah.
It is the first time successful people get completely humiliated, and we get to all see it.
Right. But it ends up being kind of a miscalculation to ridicule Trump, because, as his supporters say, that gives into Rubio's weakness, which is he's perceived as being young and juvenile. And instead of positioning himself as like the dignified alternative and rising above the fray, he's stooping to Trump's level and acting like a little kid, which Trump can just get away with.
Yeah, well, there's this quote. It's like a Southern saying that's like, you don't mud wrestle a pig because you both get dirty and the pig likes it. So it's like he's mud wrestling a pig, and you're in Trump's world now. Like if you're going to be throwing penis-sized jokes back and forth at each other, like that is where this guy thrives, and you are always going to be a pretender in that world because you are a dork who actually is like his energy is very like, you forgot to check the homework. Like it's like you can't take him on his turf.
He's like, my penis is 3 centimeters longer than yours.
Yeah, and Trump said, I mean, he says in the debate, he referred to my hands. If they are small, something else be small. Small must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem there. I guarantee. And
that's so crazy that was in the debate.
And it's this same. I think it's the same debate where, or maybe a different one, where Trump says the unthinkable and blames Bush for 9/11. Yeah. Not for doing 9/11, but for the thing that should be is incontrovertibly true, that he screwed up and didn't do his homework and 9/11 happened. And Rubio rushes to Bush's defense and says, I just want to say, on behalf of me and my family, I thank God all the time that it was George Bush in the White House and not Al Gore. And then Jeb Bush and they're talking about how safe America was. And Trump's point is like, how can you say we were safe when the World Trade Center came down? Which is so funny because it's so true. And you just like, and they don't know how to I was watching it last night and I was thinking like, well, they're going to condemn him, aren't they? But because it's just so blatantly true, they don't know how to respond. And they just like try to pivot back to like Bush being a good guy.
Do you think Kerry could have won with that? We've already done John Kerry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm sure John Kerry's watching. Oh my God. That's why he's always trying to run again, John Kerry.
Right.
He always wants to run again. He's like, I could say that line and win this time.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to run on national security, at least point out the big flub, but he was scared. I mean, it was a sensitive time, so I could see maybe that backfiring, but.
Yeah, and I'm again, Trump's big thing is that he was not a politician, not an establishment guy, so he can kind of say whatever, whereas all of these other guys, they have come up through the party machine, and to them, the Bush years and being able to do the war on terror and all that stuff was actually like a win for them. And they are like, that's when we were really powerful and cool. And so like for him to challenge that narrative of like, I think when you're a Republican candidate for president, all the former Republican presidents, you're like, that's the guy, that's my fucking guy. And for him to challenge it, even in a way that rings very true, it short circuits you, especially a person like Marco Rubio, who's like a party political machine. Yeah. He doesn't know how to handle somebody who's going to go off script like that.
Right. This is a really good point. But yeah, from when I was 5 to when I now am 41, the Republicans won the popular vote one time, and it was right during the war on terror.
Yeah.
So it is their only winning message they can think about. Yeah. Oh, but I'm saying in between those times, in that 36-year span, in which I've basically all the years I can remember, they only won the popular vote the one time, and that's when they were midst of war on terror.
Yeah, so for them, it's like, and we were getting everything, and everybody was conservative, and you had to wear a flag pin, or we could yell at you, and it was a great time for them.
Yeah, yeah, and it's now a new era, and
would you call it a new American century?
It's a new American century now. But Rubio, so this was interesting to learn. I mentioned Walter Mondale earlier. He's from Minnesota. And only won in 1984, Minnesota and Washington, D.C. In the Republican primaries, the only places Rubio wins are Minnesota, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know why. I guess people in Minnesota found him more obviously polite than Trump, because by then it's just like him, I think them and Ted Cruz. So they went with the most polite guy. But
Kasich must have been pissed. Yeah. Kasich still hot. Yeah. Kasich just hangs around. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We'll probably never do him. Yeah.
He sucks. Yeah. But obviously, he is in this kind of weird ennui phase when Trump gets the nomination and then wins, where it's like they're keeping him at arm's length because people think he's going to lose. But then he wins and they kind of don't know what to do. And they're like, okay, I guess we agree with him on basically everything. So let's embrace him. But his campaign, I think, represents, as Politico said, the heritage wing of the party and that wing took two things away from the 2000s, and the post 9/11 conflicts in Afghanistan had soured Americans on foreign entanglements, and the financial crisis had made people skeptical of the Republicans, and that wing of the party just didn't know how to address either of those things. And as Rubio's campaign staff was saying at the end of the primaries, well, 2016, that wasn't our year. People were angry, and they wanted someone like Trump, but Trump they thought was going to shit the bed, and in 2020, Rubio will rise from the rubble.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And lead the Republican Party, which, there's a lot of rubble yet to be made, so...
Yeah, well, Secretary of State, right. I'm sure he's going to create a bunch more.
Yeah.
So, but that's his goal. Yeah, it's very interesting to go back to, like, the little Marco of it all. I felt like he was one of the most thoroughly humiliated people from that primary in general, because like Trump fought with Ted Cruz. Well, Jeb was humiliated as well, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Jeb, that was bad. We got to please clap with Jeb. That was really sad. But Marco... And then like he fought with Ted Cruz, but Ted Cruz already existed in that negative space, again, like in the mud with Trump a little bit more anyway. So I don't think the people who hated Ted Cruz, like he was already hated.
Yeah.
Marco Rubio went from someone who I think had like a modicum of respect, even though the water thing people still remembered, to I think that little Marco was the most devastating of the Trump nicknames unveiled. Yeah. Crooked Hillary obviously looms very large because of its impact. But little Marco, again, like got to the heart of him in such a specific way that I think it permanently damaged how people saw him.
Yeah. And Trump had one of his best act outs was from those 2016 primaries, where he just grabs a bottle of water and he's like waving it around. It's Rubio. And then he just, with impeccable timing, just tosses the bottle away. Probably hits somebody, but he doesn't care.
Yeah.
He calls Marco a lightweight and says, because that was his main knock against his opponents. Wasn't anything like policy related. It was just like, this guy's low energy. This guy's a lightweight. Yeah. He's sweaty, I think he said at one point.
Yeah, he's just like dork, nerd, loser. Like that's just it. It was all that. And then like they would try to fight him on his own turf. And it's like, you're not gonna get there.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get there.
Well, he'll even comment on like how like you're doing terrible in the polls. He's like, oh, you're all the way on the end because no one likes you. Whereas in one debate they have 11 people instead of 10. He's like, they shouldn't even have Rand Paul. He's number 11. He should be out.
Right. That was a great line. But as we like to sort of conclude on with these episodes is if, in this case, somehow Marco maybe he does things a little more smartly with his campaign staff, or doesn't make those same mistakes, doesn't do the water thing, and he's able to best Trump in that primary, which is hard to imagine, but I guess if there's anyone who's able to do it, maybe it would be him. He goes up against Clinton. Do we think he would win? And if so, what kind of presidency would have ensued?
I think he definitely would have beaten Hillary in 2016. And if she had won in 2016, he's destroying her in 2020, trying to go for the same party 4 times. While Alyse's thing, I would say, I don't think he'd be a good president. I think he would... I don't think he could handle the media well. I think maybe he'd get a little bit of legislation done, but people just kind of will gang up on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, knowing what I know now, I think he could have beaten Hillary in 2016 for sure. I think it would have been interesting because I do think that Hillary was hurt by just the overall prevailing narrative, like that Donald Trump couldn't win. Whereas I think that Rubio would have been a serious candidate. Yeah. So maybe there would have been other people who came out or didn't vote third party or whatever because they felt like, oh, he actually could win. Whereas I think Hillary, I think people in general just really thought she was going to win, so they almost disengaged from the election in a different way. It would have been a dork off for sure. That would have been the debates would have been really boring. His presidency, I think, would have been like an extremely run-of-the-mill Republican presidency.
Yes.
Just like the most standard Republican stuff. I don't even really know.
Kind of like George H.W. Bush.
Yeah, exactly. He would have been in the vein of like, an H.W. Bush, where it's, and probably what George W. Bush would have been if 9/11 hadn't happened and thrust him into like doing this whole other thing that he eventually did.
Yeah.
Just like cutting taxes for businesses. He would have appointed some justices to the Supreme Court. Passed some conservative legislation. I don't know. It would have been interesting. He does seem to have like an interest in foreign policy, hence being Secretary of State now. So it would be interesting to see like what he would have done globally as like Ukraine or whatever came up. I guess I'm like, when Ukraine happened under Biden. I forget when anything happened. My brain is completely fried, but dealing with the international community would have been interesting.
The bad scenario is like he's doing bad. It's about re-election time, and he starts a war with Iran. That's the thing. Because he is ready to start a war. Trump almost does that, but then it's like, war's too much work. I won't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like another knock on him Trump had was that he was a choke artist, which I think is true. So I think because of that, I don't know if he would have been able to beat Clinton, because he's primed to in some ways, but I think there would have been some really bad gaffe that she would have been able to take advantage of. And I don't know that the same swing voters who went in like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, who went from Obama to Trump would have gone to Rubio. I think maybe they would have stuck with Clinton or stayed home. Trump may have been a third party candidate too in 2016 if he hadn't got the nomination. And I think that's another thing is if he's elected president, Trump is still probably a phenomenon, and he's making conservatives angry. And the Republican Party isn't getting less racist at that point, I don't think. And so,
which is actually probably his idea. Like in Donald Trump's ideal world, that's actually probably what have happened is that he doesn't get the nomination, but he can kind of say like, "Oh, Republicans pushed me out." Like he can claim like, it would have been me, but blah, blah, blah. And then he gets to just kind of do rallies and like go on TV and bother people forever. And people have to listen to him because he's like powerful, but he doesn't have to do anything.
Right.
And nobody's looking too closely at his businesses and all of that different stuff. But instead he just like actually fucking won twice.
Right, which is crazy. Yeah, I think he would have had a cable network, which I remember people saying.
Yes, that's what he actually wanted. Yeah. That he wanted to do that. There's a clip of Trump on, it's either Oprah. It's one of like the daytime talk shows. I think it's Oprah. And he's like it's in the early 90s, and he's giving dating advice to a woman in the audience. And you can tell that it's just the joy of his life. Like he's so happy to be doing it. And I'm like, you gave all of this up to do something that you hate so much because you want to be the most famous person in the world. And you got it. You are the most famous person in the world. But also now you don't get to hang out with celebrities anymore and give fun dating advice on Oprah, or like have people not care that you do shady business dealings. Like those were the like white collar crime and hanging out with celebrities were the joys of his life, and he doesn't get to do it anymore. And that's like the one solace that I have for him, that he's in a hell of his own making, but he's also taking us all down with him. So
well, yeah, I think that's a good note to wrap up on. And it's I don't know. I guess it's too bad Rubio wasn't able to help Trump go back to his true calling, but maybe he will. Maybe he'll do something that ends up tanking the Trump administration. That's what we can hope.
It's
for.
possible. We hope they fall out and Trump starts roasting him.
Yeah,
that's the one silver lining.
Will happen. I guess that's something to look forward to. I'm sure he will get fired, and there will be some fun.
Little Marco, you're my secretary, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, he did like string him along for a long time on VP, and then not pick him as well. So I do think that I think that Trump likes keeping Marco Rubio around because he likes fucking with him.
Yeah.
I think he's like, that stupid little dork. I'm going to mess with him now too.
Oh, and I bet that's going to happen. I bet he's going to give like a speech saying this is the policy of the United States. And then he's going to Trump is going to whisper in his ear and he's going to come back out and give the opposite speech and just be totally sweaty and flustered.
Oh, Trump's going to make his life hell with the stuff that he says about international, about international relations that Marco Rubio then has to like launder into being a real policy position. It's not good.
This is sort of revenge on Chris Christie, because Christie was the head of the transition team and wanted a position in the 2016 administration, got fired, didn't get one. And now Rubio gets Secretary of State. So he can kind of hoard that over Chris Christie if they ever meet.
All right. Well, Alyse Morales, thank you so much for joining us.
This is wonderful.
Yeah.
I'll talk shit about Marco Rubio all day.
Oh, awesome. Well, where can people find you and your work?
People can find me. I am Pandalise on Instagram. That's Pandalise. And I'm Alyse Navidad on TikTok, which is the far superior handle, but I can't get it on Insta, and it's a whole thing. So you can follow me there. I'm also on Blue Sky now.
Me too.
I'm on Blue Sky. It's just my name. Oh, and I have a podcast called Go Touch Grass, where my co-host Millie Tamaras and I break down the week in like viral internet discourse, so that you don't have to pay attention to all that stuff yourself. We will poison our brains with it. Cool. And you can go do other things.
I'm on social media @AndersLee here, and the podcast is @Vanquished Pod. And subscribe to our Patreon so you can hear more in-depth Marco Rubio analysis.
Beautiful.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Vanquished. If you want the full thing, because there is more, please go to patreon.com/TheVanquished, where you can get the rest of this episode as well as our full episode catalog. You can support our work as well as annoy us in the comments.